Hello friends, this is This Week in Acts. Today we're taking a look at Paul's speech in Acts chapter 26. Here, Paul will be heard by a governor, Festus, by a king and his influential wife, Agrippa II, the son of Herod Agrippa I, whose death was recorded in Acts chapter 12, by the military officials and by the leading citizens of Caesarea, according to chapter 25 and verse 23. He could hardly appear before figures more well placed in society or before an audience of more higher-ups. First of all, I want us to notice that Paul makes the point that his entire life has been lived openly as a Jew, and his hearers know it. Paul briefly sketches his former life as a Pharisee, as well as his over-the-top opposition to Christians. I pursued them even to foreign cities and condemned them to death, he says. His detractors cannot convict him of being anti-Jewish, no way. Then Paul tells of hearing the voice of the Lord on the road to Damascus. Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It hurts you to kick against the goads. A contemporary equivalent would be cattle prod. And the idea here is that God has been pushing Paul to become a disciple of Jesus, and Paul has resisted. Then Paul tells of the new mission of his life that God had given to him. First, to be a witness of what he has seen and heard, and this would place Paul in continuity with the prophets of old, the 12, and Stephen. And second, the mission to go to both Jew and Gentile alike and open their eyes so they can turn from darkness to light and from the power of Satan to God, that they might receive forgiveness of sins and a share among those who have been made holy by their faith in God. Then, Paul explains the central theme of his testimony, that Jesus has been raised from the dead. Why is it thought incredible by any of you that God raises the dead? Paul asks. In that resurrection, God was only fulfilling his promises found in the Old Testament, Paul argues. The prophets and Moses said that this would take place. At that point, Festus accused Paul of what? Being out of his mind. That the Christ would suffer and die, well, that was scandalous to the Jewish world. That someone could be raised from the dead, well, that was hard to believe by the educated Greek world. No, Paul says, I'm not insane. I'm not out of my mind. And the king and his wife know that I'm speaking the truth. And then Paul turns his gaze to Agrippa. Agrippa, do you believe the prophets? I know that you do. And then what follows in the narrative is Agrippa's enigmatic reply. Are you so quickly persuading me to become a Christian? Here is how I believe we should understand this difficult to understand reply. If Agrippa believes in the prophets, and Paul knows that he does, he ought to perceive the validity of Paul's claims. And Agrippa is sufficiently perceptive to see that if he agrees concerning the prophets, he is already, for Paul's purposes, he is already playing the Christian a little. So Agrippa sidesteps the challenge by humorously identifying Paul's logic. Agrippa does not want to be led down that logical path that since he believes the prophets, he must believe in the claims of Christ. So he responds, Paul, I see what you're trying to do. You are persuading me to play the Christian a little. And Paul's response? Oh, I pray to God that you would all become like me, except for these change, that you would all be followers of Jesus. And here is our application for today. Paul is pleading for his life, yes, and he succeeds. For he will remain in protective custody and be sent to Rome to make his defense before the emperor himself. That is God's plan, and that is what will happen. But at another level, we might say that Paul has failed, because he is not, after all, simply seeking his own survival. No, he is under a mandate from the Lord to proclaim to both Jews and Gentiles, to both small and great, to proclaim that Jesus is the Christ, raised from the dead, the Savior of the world. Paul really does want all those hearing him to become as he is. And as far as we know, Festus, Agrippa, and Bernice left that hearing with Paul without ever making the decision to become disciples of Jesus. How sad. So today, we commend Paul for proclaiming the good news as his first and most important priority. And our challenge is, again, to imitate him, to have the same passion and drive for Christ to be known, even if we must do so at great personal sacrifice. Let us be about proclaiming the gospel. And let's be about praying as Paul prayed, that all those around us would become as we are, servants of God and followers of Jesus. Our task? Proclaim and pray. That's our challenge, and may God bless us as we fulfill it.